Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today for our Spurs preview is AJ. How you doing, mate?
Good as gold, my friend. Good as gold. Looking forward to this one on the weekend.
Yeah, it should be a good one. And also joining us is Drew. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing well, my friend. Doing well. Still alive despite the best efforts of our northeastern tribe.
Obviously, we're here to talk about the Spurs game coming up this weekend. We are recording this slightly later than we normally do. We usually record this on Thursday night, but we're recording on Friday night. So it means we've actually had the hindsight of seeing Marco Silva's press conference for once before we do one of these, which is going to make the first bit where we will talk about squad a little bit easier because we have a little bit more of an idea of us. For us, team news for Fulham obviously is sadly it looks like Kevin has broken his metatarsal in his foot. It hasn't 100% been confirmed, but the club have confirmed he'll be out for several weeks. Was the official term, which isn't great. The good news is Sasha Lukic, Samuel Chukwueze, and Anthony Robinson are all in contention to be playing, which is good news for Fulham. On the Spurs side of it, Pedro Porro and Kevin Danso are both recovered from their injuries, and they should be due to play. Kulusevski, Odegaard, Madison, Bendonka, Kudus, Bergval, Davis, Agadi are all out, and Romero is suspended. So should be an interesting one squad wise for Spurs too. AJ, I'll start with you, mate. Same question we always ask every week. Looking at that, we know Kevin's out injured. What are you expecting squad wise? Who are you expecting to come in to replace him?
It's an interesting one because part of me says that we continue with what we're doing. We stick with this 4-3-3/4-2-3-1, and we just swap out Kevin for Bob or Chukwueze, whichever one's more fit and up to the challenge. But part of me thinks we swap out to a back three to match Spurs and play them at their own game and have Sessegnon as sort of a left wing back. Which could be really interesting and exciting against them. So it's one of the two for me, but I think squad wise, we're not going to see too many changes. And I think we're likely to see Raul continue with his good vein of form from the last game.
Yeah, well, obviously Rail is one of the players we're going to speak about tonight. Obviously, we got a bit of slack after last week's episode. I did personally as well because of comments that I made about him and potentially getting a new contract and maybe not wanting him to have that. We all here fully appreciate what Rail does as a job for the team. He works his socks off. He's been an absolute trooper, considering he's been the only fit striker that Marco Silva wants to play for the last 4.5 months. You know, the man's done his job. Uh, it's important that wants to play is the bit that was said there. You know, he's done a great job. Contract coming up at the end of the season. Will he get a new one? Who knows? We've obviously looking at positives with contract talks. There is rumours coming out of the club this week that maybe some positive steps have been made with Marco Silva signing a new contract. But again, they're just rumours. They don't mean anything. But also, it's heavily rumoured now that Harry Wilson has had a contract offer and he has turned it down. But again, no confirmation or anything public other than hearsay. So I'm not so surprised by the Harry Wilson news because uh, as we all know, he's probably wanting a bump in pay, and Fulham probably knowing Fulham and not offering that greatly. Let's look at this game, obviously going in on Sunday. Drew, Spurs ultimately they have a good squad, right? But they are really struggling at the moment. I don't know if it's just they're really out of whack. They really couldn't get playing under Thomas Frank. New man just come in. They had a hard game last week. What are you expecting from Spurs this week?
Um, what am I expecting? Something I've said it about Spurs before. There's something fundamentally wrong with the club's DNA. They got a strong streak of yellow running right through them. If you get on top of Spurs, I am in no doubt they do not have the intestinal fortitude to hold out. It is imperative that we don't let them gain any confidence. It says how bad they are that Arsenal couldn't buy a win before they went to Spurs, and they completely took them apart. Bearing in mind it was London derby, bearing in mind there was local bragging rights, Spurs were just unfortunately blown away for them. They'll look at us, as they always do, as little old Fulham, and see us as an inferior team and expect to take points off us. We've got home advantage. We're coming off a good win against the Mackhams. A win, despite what the Mackhams say, was thoroughly deserved. If we start on the front foot and stay on the front foot, I think Spurs will have trouble coping with it, and I think they'll have trouble holding out. I have no faith in Spurs to grind out a result. They're either going to be scintillating or they're going to fold. There doesn't seem to be any in between with them, and too often this season they've folded. So they've got good individual players. I think that Van der Ven is one of the best centre backs in the league. I mean, they've obviously still got JP, although the Spurs fans don't seem to rate him much. They've got some talent, but they're just not a team, and they're prone to massive mistakes. So I'm not saying I'm super confident, but I think they're a team that's 4 points above the relegation zone, and it shows.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, really. I think that, we have to go into this game how we attacked the away fixture of this. We hit Spurs hard for the first 10 minutes, and we got that 2-goal lead, and I think the game was pretty much wrapped up from that moment onwards. Even when Spurs were attacking forward, we always looked dangerous on the counter attack from that point. So a fast start is probably going to be really important for us again going into this game. I watched them last week against Arsenal, and although they got a bit unlucky with some of the decisions that went against them, they weren't great, and they haven't been good for a very long time. And so they can blame they got a lot of injuries, and they got a lot of good players that are out injured. They can blame that probably the one player in their squad who's got a little bit of fight is out suspended. Who knows? It's one of those things that you look at this Spurs squad, and the fact that they're having to play João Palhinha at centre back says an awful lot about where they are tactically at the moment. And we have to look at that. This is one of those games where if Fulham don't win on Sunday, it'll be down to us, not down to Spurs. I know media won't see it that way, and it won't be put that way, and Sky won't talk about it that way. But I think it's as simple as that. If Fulham can play the way we know we can play at home, we'll win this game. And it's probably been a long time, barring last season, that you could say that against Spurs. I'm fully confident if Fulham do what Fulham can do well, we'll win this game of football. AJ, looking at Spurs' form, looking at our form, we're a bit hit and miss at the moment. We know they're just a bit miss. What are you expecting from this game? What do you want to see from certain players? Maybe correcting some thoughts with the way we've been playing over the last couple of weeks.
See, what I'm expecting is for it to roll back to Christmas suddenly, and Fulham playing the role of Santa Claus for good old Spurs and giving them a nice present to avoid the drop, because it's very typical of us. However, what I'm hoping for is the complete opposite, and that we pounce on their really bad patch of form and all of their injuries and go into this game swinging, and Sessegnon has a masterclass because he absolutely loves playing against these guys. So here's to that, frankly.
Let's look at a couple of positions on our team that we've had some concerns with over the last couple of weeks, and let's talk about what we do going forward with that. Whether you stick or twist. I want to get both of your opinions on certain players in the squad and whether or not we should stick and twist, considering how they played, and what you should do, what you would do personally. Obviously, the main one is Sander Berg. He has had a couple of really poor weeks, a couple of really poor games. Drew, I'll ask you first, mate, because you saw him last week at Sunderland, and you probably might have had a slightly different view to the rest of us who were watching it on TV. But if you were Marco, would you stick with him with Lukic being back in the contention to play, or would you twist and switch it out?
I mean, I've been quite open about my desire to see Lukic playing in front of the back four, because I think he senses danger probably better than anyone in the midfield, outside of arguably Harrison Reed. I know that he's not averse to using the dark arts and channeling his inner Stefan Johansson. Berge is a bit of a conundrum, because earlier in the season he started off like a bit of a house on fire. I don't know whether it's because I mean, every player has a dip in form. He wasn't. I don't think he was as disastrous against Sunderland as some made out, but I wouldn't be averse to taking him out the firing line and playing Lukic in the 6 position, because at the moment I think Silva is quite happy with ESR and Iwobi sitting in midfield. But I wouldn't bat an eyelid if you told me that Berge had been dropped and Lukic had taken his place. And in fact, it might actually reinvigorate Berge. I mean, I still think that there's a lot more to his game. Everyone talks about, he doesn't shoot, he doesn't pass forward and all that sort of stuff. I mean, anyone who saw him play for Burnley against us saw him completely run forward straight through our midfield and put the ball in the bottom corner of our net. So he's capable of doing it. You can only assume the reason he's not is because he's under strict instructions from Marco, how he wants to play. But yeah, I mean, I would more than happily see Lukic come in for Berg and Lukic sit in the 6. The problem you've got with Lukic, of course, is the obligatory yellow card. And if things get spicy, is it going to cost us a problem? When we get deep into the game, if he's picked up a yellow card within the first half hour, which we all know is well within the realms of possibility.
I think you're not necessarily have to be gambling, but if you see Lukic and João Palhinha on the starting lineups on Sunday, stick a 5 on both of them to get yellow carded. It's probably going to be the easiest money you're ever going to make. It's one of those ones, isn't it, that I want to see a bit of change with Lukic. I think you're right. I think Sanderberg maybe needs to have a break, not because he's been disastrous, but because it might just reinvigorate him a little bit. You have to look at Emil Smith-Rowe as the example for that, who obviously got dropped for Josh King. Josh King came in and did a great job, but the Emil Smith-Rowe we've seen since he's come back into the squad is lightly years above the one that got dropped. It's one of those things, isn't it, that sometimes players need that. They need that reminder that you're not just going to play. And also, I think that the Premier League football is hard. It's not just physically hard; it's mentally tough. And sometimes you just need a little bit of a break for it. The other one I'm going to ask AJ about is the conundrum with strikers. We know that Rail has been brilliant in the sense of he scored a couple of goals. All right, none from open play. We moaned about it last week that he's never in the box. But we're also trying to get Muniz back fit. At some point, we're going to have to start Muniz over Raul in a Premier League game because it needs to happen. Is this week maybe a little bit too soon coming back from his injury still for you, AJ? Or, is it a conundrum that if you saw it on Sunday and you saw that Muniz was playing with instead of Raul, are you going to be annoyed at that? Or is it it could be either way for you?
I'd prefer Muniz personally. I think he's better in these bigger fixtures. I think he steps up more against this sort of opposition. He seems to have a little bit of that Andreas syndrome where he really likes to show up in big games. Maybe it's a Brazilian thing, I don't know. But I'd love to see more of Muniz, mostly because he's still relatively young. And if we can start getting that player of the month form out of him on a regular basis that he got, a year ago now, or 2 years ago, whenever it was, if we can get that form out of him on a regular basis, we can stop trying to shop around for a striker, frankly, because it's clear his level of technical ability is extremely good. But ultimately, we're going to end up seeing Raul because Marco loves him and Marco knows he's consistent and he's not going to drop a 4 out of 10. He's going to continue to work hard for us. Even when he's poor because he's doing his job, and that's not going to put Marco off. Marco's said that he wants Raul to renew, and whether or not fans want him to or not, it'll be Raul's decision at the end of the day. I want to see Muniz. I think we see Raul at the end of it, to put it simply put.
I think either way, we'll be looking for a new striker at the end of the season, because even if Raul stays, I don't think he's going to be first choice next year. I think it's a weird one with Raul that if he does stay, he knows he's going to be staying and maybe not being first choice. So I don't think that changes there. But it's more, for me, it's an interesting one because I want to see Muniz more than I want to see Raul starting, just because I think that Muniz has a bit of that. He just has a little bit of unpredictability about him, and sometimes you need that from a striker. But also, he's slightly more reliable, being in the bloody middle of the box when you get the ball in the box than Raul is. Don't get me wrong, I'm not moaning about that too much about Raul, because the work he does off the ball and the running he does around the pitch is superb, and he does that better than Muniz. It's just an interesting one for me. The last one, obviously, I want to talk about is our left back position. Now, Drew, we know Robertson's due to be back this week. I'm not necessarily advocating dropping Cess. I'm not necessarily advocating for playing Jedi. But knowing how well Cess has taken playing against Spurs the couple of times he's playing against them, would you be tempted to drop him for Robinson, or would you keep it as it is at left back, considering that Robinson's injury problems seem to be sort of sticking up for him at the minute?
What about this? We've lost Kevin. Bobbers is still coming back from a long-term injury. We know Kudus isn't playing, so Spurs aren't going to be as strong down their right-hand side. What about if we throw Cess into the left-hand side of midfield and put Robinson behind him? Okay, we will lose the explosiveness of Kevin, but we can't do anything about that because, bless Kevin, he's worked so hard, and just when he was rounding into form, he breaks his foot. We all are crossing everything we've got that we see him before the end of the season, but deep down, I'm bracing myself for not seeing him until pre-season for the season 26-27, which is a real shame. Because even at Sunderland, everything we did when he had the ball, they rotated everything over towards him. He literally tilted the field. But, and I know that there are people out here that say Cess isn't a winger, and I understand that. But he can still provide offensively, and I just wonder if we put them both on the field, how it would work, because it would still give us cover with Chukwueze, with Bob, and with Wilson. And if we have an issue with Robinson breaking down again or getting tired, Cess is already there. We can just move him backwards. I would be tempted to try it. Because, as you said, Cess loves playing against Spurs. He loves playing against the Cottage. And Ash, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I'm fed up of seeing Calvin Bassey have to play 1.5 positions every time Cess is on the field. Okay, Calvin Bassey was immense against Sunderland. I mean, he was the Calvin Bassey that we fell in love with last season. But he pulled out to the left far more than Anderson had to pull out to the right. Yeah, and with Cess at left back, you got to accept that. Love him. So I would be tempted to throw Cess further forward, bearing in mind Chuck's just coming back off an injury. Bobbers, love him, as we've said, is getting used to a new team. And it may be a way of surprising Spurs and putting a lot of pressure on them. There's something to be said as well. If we need an X factor, bringing on Chukwueze later when Spurs start to tire. and in the hope that they make rash mistakes, rash challenges, bring him down and collect more cards and potentially, give away valuable set plays. But I'd be tempted to play Robinson behind Cess and see where that goes. Now, that is going to go down like a lead balloon with Fulham faithful. But I cannot see Bob starting because, for the reasons I've already outlined, Chukwueze is infinitely more important in the absence of Kevin. And we desperately need him for the running. So I wouldn't want to try and extract 90 minutes from him when he's just come back. And Harry picks himself. I mean, you can't drop Harry Wilson at this moment in time. You just can't. I mean, the third goal on Sunday was everything about Harry Wilson. When he's playing well, he just gives us a different dimension. So that's what personally, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Silva will never do it. But that's what I would do.
You know what Silva will do? Silva will play ESR on the left with King through the middle.
I've got no time for ESR as a winger. I'm sorry.
No, I agree.
I've got no time. I spent years watching Iwobi check back inside because he's got no left foot. Yeah, But anyway, you're right, AJ.
I think it's an interesting take, and I agree with it. I think that if Robertson's fit enough to play, and he's actually fit enough to play, he should be our natural left back because he's just the more natural of a left back than Cess is. Cess has done an outstanding job at left back when he's needed, but you're also correct in saying that whenever Cess plays at left back, it gives Bassi another extra half a job to do, which isn't helpful when we concede goals in the way that we concede goals at times. It's frustrating to watch that. I also think that depending on what Chuckwade's actual injury was, because we're none the wiser of the actual extent of his injury, other than he was feeling his groin a little bit. That could be a pull, that could be nothing. It's one of those things that it's probably not a bad shout. And I also agree that Chuck coming on as a sub in the 65th, 70th minute mark, which is Marco's sweet spot on making that sub, works pretty well, and it worked quite well against Brighton when we needed to come from behind. So it's not a bad shout to see that happen. Let's finish this one how we always do. Players to watch on both teams. Scoreline predictions, please. AJ, I'll start with you, mate. Can I have players to watch on both teams and your scoreline prediction, please?
Harry Wilson has to be the man to watch for us. It's the sort of game that he thrived on last time, and we can expect the same again this time, I think. For Spurs, who do we watch for them apart from their medical team? Because their injury list is ridiculous. Who's a genuine worry for us? You know what? I'm inclined to just say João Paulinho, because the one good game he'll have for Spurs all season is probably in front of the Fulham faithful. Scoreline prediction. Yeah, I'm just having a think. Give me 3-1 Fulham. Sod it.
Lovely bit of positivity there. Drew, how about you, mate? One to watch from each team and a scoreline prediction, please.
Spurs strikers, who have they got up front at the moment that's fit?
Richarlison.
Is that it?
And Kolo Muani.
Yeah.
Kolo Muani's been playing well.
He was unlucky last week.
He concerns me.
Very unlucky last week.
Gallagher, at the time of this show being recorded, hasn't been infected with the Spurs defeatist attitude that they tend to have, and he will run and run and run. I think Van der Ven is a fantastic centre back, made to look for, because he is doing for Spurs what Bassi does for us, but for a greater extent, because Spurs just are at 6s and 7s at the back. Although Spence, I do quite like Spence. I've named quite a few players. So I think Van de Ven has to have a really good game because I'm inclined to agree with AJ. If Fulham want this and Fulham are aggressive, Fulham can score 3 goals. I absolutely believe Fulham can score 3 goals. Do I think Fulham will keep a clean sheet? No, I don't, because I watch us play on a regular basis. So I can see why AJ's saying Spurs will score, because we're Fulham. Player to watch from our side. Cess, if he does play where I want him to play, because I think he could. I think he would really seize his opportunity. If he comes on, I think King has been chomping at the bit because he provides a lot of energy. Bassey's going to be key, especially if Colomwani is on it. But we've already talked about it. In fact, Ash, it was one of your first opening gambits, the return of Lukic. If Lukic goes into our midfield, especially if he takes place at Berge, I think that could be quite significant. I think that's where the game could be won or lost. So yeah, the return of Lukic, I'm putting it, and I'm bigging him up now, and he's not even going to start, and you both are going to laugh at me, right? But I think the return of Lukic could be really, really good for us. Really good for us, because I don't know about you, Ash or AJ, but I think we look a bit naive when people start running off our midfielders. And I'm not advocating that we start breaking people's legs, but I think a professional yellow card here or there, do you know what I mean? Or a blatant rugby tackle wouldn't go amiss sometimes, because we sometimes we're just a little bit too easy, you know?
Naive. It's naive. Sometimes we're
yeah.
just a bit too naive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think Luke, as we've talked about Raul in terms of his know-how, and sometimes we find him in positions that he shouldn't be in simply because he's seeing things others are not, and he's trying to fill gaps. I think Lukic does that from a defensive awareness point of view in our midfield. A bit like how Tom, when he comes on, we're always banking on him to be able to control the tempo of the game and pick a pass, because no one else, the greatest respect, can do it like him. I just think with Lukic on the field, we're a bit more streetwise.
Scoreline prediction?
I think Spurs will score. I think AJ's bang on there. I was going for 3-1, but I'll hedge my bets and say 2. But I think Fulham will win, provided, Ash, as you said, Fulham go on the front foot. Because if we're passive, our review show is going to be basically a suicide pact.
I think for me, Van de Ven is the clear favourite for Tottenham.
I completely forgot about it, from being honest.
The one player that I love to watch out of their squad. Like, even as poor as they've been this season, he always impresses me. Like,
sorry, boys,
he's
are you surprised Liverpool didn't go for him?
Yes,
he plays on the same side as Virgil van Dijk, so it's a bit of a tough one.
Van Dijk needs to be moved on. Sorry,
Very
I
true.
digress.
Very true.
It won't surprise me if they come in for this season. It won't be surprising if they come in for him this season, especially if Spurs do go down. But let's finish what we're talking about for the game here, right? That Van de Ven would be my player to watch, and if Van de Ven is the Spurs player to watch, it probably means we're having a good day going forward. Because he's going to have to stand out to stop that, especially if he's got João Paulinho playing next to him, who, we all love João, and as much as he can tackle, he's not a centre back, and they keep playing him there.
No, he's not.
And they keep playing him there. And there's probably a few players on this Fulham squad that are smart enough to know how to maybe just get on the right side of João to make sure that he's giving away fouls and gets that obligatory yellow card that we know he can get. Fulham-wise, players to watch. As much as I bigged him up earlier, I think Emil Smith-Rowe needs a big game. I thought he was a little bit quiet against Sunderland last week. What he did do, he did well, but I thought he was just a little bit quiet. And if he's going to keep his space as he is, he needs to maybe just produce something. And if there's a game he's going to do it, it's going to be Tottenham. We all know, as much as he plays for Fulham and he's happy to be here. He is all Arsenal, so he'll be wanting to do something in this game, right? We can't pretend that isn't even remotely the case. Alex Iwobi is also a player to watch for me because last week he took his goal exceptionally well. For once, I'd wish he'd just have a shot that isn't off of his heel. But you know, Alex Iwobi is Alex Iwobi. What he does in the middle of the park is great. If I see him playing on the left-hand side on Sunday, which I am having nightmares already that there's a chance we might see that. As much as we joked about ESR playing there, if I see Alex Iwobi on the wing on Sunday, I think I might cry before the game kicks off because he's so much better down the middle and he gives us so much more in the middle of the pitch. And we'll go for that. Scoreline-wise, I say this all the time when it comes to Fulham about quality and effort. Quality-wise, I think we're not that far. I think our two squads aren't that different, especially with Spurs' injuries at the moment. And they're all at 6s and 7s in most positions. So as long as we outfight them, we'll win this game of football. And it is as simple as that. I don't trust our defence and our goalkeeper to keep a clean sheet because we always usually make one mistake that lets a team in. So I think 3-1 unanimously between all three of us is probably a great shout for a Fulham win. Probably be the first
Can't
time
wait
that
to
everyone
lose
on the
2-0.
panel it'd probably be the first time all three of us all four of us
But I mean,
all pick the
if
same score.
looking at the bigger
I'm gonna
picture,
say
boys,
3-1 Fulham.
we've got back-to-back games against teams that are beneath us. We need to keep the space. We have to go into these two games. I personally, I think we need 6 points.
Do you not think it's a bit mad that if we win on Sunday, we'll have 40 points and we're still looking over our shoulder a little bit? That's crazy, right?
I totally, Ash, but that's
yeah.
why I'm saying they're both beneath us. West Ham are showing signs of life. We need to keep the distance.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think that the performance that comes out on Sunday will definitely have a massive knock on to the performance that we see against West Ham during the week. We'll talk that when we do our match review and we do our match preview of those games earlier on next week. I imagine that whatever happens on Sunday is going to have a massive knock on to how we feel about going into that West Ham game on Wednesday, especially with the way that they've been playing of late. Look, lads, thanks very much for joining me. Everyone, thanks very much for joining us for this week's preview show. I know it's unusually come out on a Saturday morning rather than a Friday morning. Game's not till tomorrow anyway, so you've got plenty of time to listen to it and enjoy it. Let us know your predictions, players to watch, scoreline predictions. Thanks everyone who's been sharing the channel of late. Please do come and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We're trying to get these numbers up. It helps us give us more coverage and reach more Fulham fans, which means that we can give you better content, which is always better our side. Not really much more to say other than have a good weekend. Hopefully Fulham don't ruin it. And come on, you Whites.